What if I told you there was a town that simply vanished? Not in a sudden fire, not in a war, not even in a natural disaster. I'm talking about a place swallowed by something stranger, something darker. This town was called Hollow Pines, and once upon a time, it was just like any other small town you might drive through without a second thought. Families lived there, children played in the streets, people went to church on Sundays, and neighbors waved to each other on the way to work. It was ordinary, familiar, safe. But then, everything changed. The sun stopped rising. The night came, and it never left. Imagine waking up and realizing you'll never see daylight again. Imagine watching your entire town sink deeper and deeper into shadows until fear is all that's left. That's what happened in Hollow Pines. And to this day, no one can fully explain how or why. Before the endless night, Hollow Pines was the kind of place people called quiet but alive. It sat tucked away in the woods, surrounded by tall pine trees that stretched for miles in every direction. Logging was the lifeline of the town. You'd hear the sound of axes and saws during the day, and in the evenings, families gathered on front porches while kids played tag under the fading light. There was a small schoolhouse at the center of town, one church with a bell that rang every Sunday morning, and a general store that sold everything from flour to lantern oil. It wasn't a rich town, not by any means, but it was steady. People worked hard, raised their families, and leaned on each other when times got tough. If you had visited Hollow Pines back then, nothing about it would have seemed unusual. Maybe a little too remote, maybe a little too quiet, but not dangerous. Just another small town carved out of the wilderness. But some people, years later, claimed the forest always felt different around Hollow Pines. The pines grew taller and denser than they should. The air was heavy, even during the summer months. And the woods? They were silent. No birdsong, no rustle of small animals, just wind slipping through branches that seemed to lean a little too close. At the time, nobody thought much of it. To the people of Hollow Pines, that was just life. They didn't know the forest was waiting, watching, growing darker with every passing day. At first, no one in Hollow Pines noticed anything unusual. The forest had always been thick, and shadows were a part of everyday life. But slowly, almost too slowly to notice, the days began to shrink. The townspeople would wake up early to begin their work, only to realize the morning light was fading far too soon. Noon began to look more like dusk. By the time children were dismissed from school, the town was already covered in a strange, heavy twilight. People joked about it at first. They said things like, "Looks like the sun's getting lazy," or "Guess winter's coming early this year." But deep down, there was unease. Then came the strange weather. Clouds seemed to gather endlessly over the town, yet there was no storm, no rain, no lightning. Just a thick gray ceiling that blocked out more and more sunlight. The pine trees themselves began to look different. Branches stretched wider, twisting together until they overlapped, making the forest feel like a solid wall of shadow. Even the locals who had lived there their whole lives started getting lost just steps beyond the tree line. And it wasn't just the forest. The air felt heavier, too. People began to notice the silence more. The animals had gone quiet. No bird song at dawn, no crickets at night. Just the sound of the wind pushing through the pines, as if the whole forest was whispering at once. The shift crept into people's daily lives. Shopkeepers started closing early because they couldn't rely on daylight anymore. Farmers complained their crops weren't growing as they should, with too little sun reaching their fields. Children grew restless, afraid to play outside when the world already felt like nighttime by mid-afternoon. A few townsfolk tried to laugh it off, insisting it was just an unusually long winter, but others couldn't shake the feeling that something was wrong, that this wasn't just weather, that Hollow Pines was slowly being covered, not by clouds, but by something else, something that wanted the town hidden in shadows. And this was only the beginning. By now, Hollow Pines was no longer a normal town. Days and nights had melted together into one long stretch of shadow. The sun would rise faintly, just for a moment, and then vanish again behind the trees and clouds. Before long, the people realized something terrifying. The light wasn't coming back. Imagine what that does to a person. Your body is used to waking with the sun, resting when it sets. Without it, everything unravels. People in Hollow Pines couldn't tell when to eat, when to sleep, or even what day it was. Some woke up at what they thought was morning, only to find it was midnight. Others stayed awake for days, wandering the streets with hollow eyes, muttering about the dark. Shops closed their doors one by one. Farmers gave up on their fields. The crops were withering. The animals, cows, horses, even the dogs, had grown skittish, refusing to go outside. Some refused to eat. Chickens stopped laying eggs. It was as if the entire natural world understood something the townspeople didn't. To this day, no one knows how or why the town disappeared. All that remains are the empty houses, the thick forest pressing in, and a silence that makes the air feel heavy, as if the pines themselves are holding their breath. Even though Hollow Pines has long been abandoned, the story doesn't end there. In fact, some say it's more alive now than it ever was. Hikers who've tried to reach the site talk about strange experiences before they even set foot in the old town. Their compasses spin wildly. GPS trackers lose signal. Some report walking in circles for hours, always ending up back where they started, even though they swear they were heading in a straight line. And for those who make it into Hollow Pines, the reports get darker. Many describe a silence that's almost unbearable, so complete that you can hear your own heartbeat echo in your ears. Then, without warning, they'll hear something else. The sound of footsteps on dead leaves, keeping pace just behind them. When they turn around, no one's there. Others say they've seen faint lights glowing in the windows of abandoned houses. Not candlelight, not lanterns. A cold, bluish glow, moving slowly from room to room, as though someone, or something, is still inside. There are whispers, too. Low voices drifting through the trees, sometimes calling hikers by name. Imagine hearing your name spoken in the darkness by a voice you don't recognize. Some say the voices are soft, almost coaxing, while others swear they were warnings to leave. And then there are the shadows, tall, thin shapes that move between the trees, always just at the edge of vision. Explorers claim the longer you stay, the closer they get. One man described it as the forest itself leaning in to watch. A few who visited Hollow Pines never came back at all. Search teams have been sent in to recover them, but all they find are abandoned backpacks, half-crushed tents, or flashlights flickering weakly on the ground. No bodies, no signs of a struggle. Just as it's always been in Hollow Pines, the people are simply gone. So maybe the town didn't die after all. Maybe it's still there, waiting, feeding on anyone bold enough to step inside. Over the years, people have tried to explain Hollow Pines. Some believe the answer is natural. Others insist it's supernatural. And honestly, the more you listen, the harder it gets to decide which side makes more sense. Let's start with the scientific theories. Some say Hollow Pines may have been the victim of a rare weather phenomenon. Imagine a combination of thick, unbroken cloud cover, strange wind patterns, and the dense canopy of pines themselves. Could it have created the illusion of permanent night? To the human mind, trapped in isolation, even a few weeks of this might have been enough to cause panic. Others point to psychological factors. In a town so remote, cut off from the outside world, the lack of sunlight could have triggered mass hysteria. Seasonal depression, paranoia, and sleep deprivation can twist the mind in terrifying ways. Maybe the townspeople weren't taken by the forest at all. Maybe they simply lost themselves in the dark, wandering away until they never returned. Another theory suggests something more physical. Toxic gas leaking from beneath the earth, poisoning minds, causing hallucinations. That could explain the whispers, the figures in the trees, the strange behavior of animals. And if the forest was covering old fault lines, maybe sinkholes or hidden crevices swallowed people without a trace. But then, there are the theories that can't be explained away so easily. The paranormal believers say Hollow Pines wasn't a victim of nature. It was a victim of something far older. Some claim the land itself is cursed, tied to ancient rituals or tragedies long forgotten. The endless night wasn't weather. It was punishment. Others insist the forest is alive, that the trees aren't just trees, but part of something bigger, something intelligent. They say it watches, waits, and feeds, luring people in with whispers, then keeping them forever. That's why no bodies are ever found. The forest doesn't just hide them, it consumes them. And then there's the strangest theory of all, that Hollow Pines was never a town to begin with, that it was something like a mirage, a place that slipped between worlds. Maybe the people didn't vanish at all. Maybe the entire town was pulled into another reality, trapped in a night that never ends. Science can explain some of it. Paranormal stories can explain the rest. But neither side can explain all of it. Which leaves one final possibility, that Hollow Pines holds a truth so dark, so strange, that we're simply not meant to understand it. For all the stories, all the theories, Hollow Pines still leaves us with more questions than answers. Why were no bodies ever found? Not a single one. People vanish, entire families disappear, yet there's no sign of where they went. If it was weather or madness, or even some predator in the woods, shouldn't there be at least something? Bones, clothing, a trace of blood? But there's nothing. Why doesn't Hollow Pines appear on every map? How can one cartographer mark the town clearly, while another acts as if it never existed? Was it human error? Or is something actively erasing it from record, trying to keep the truth hidden? And what about the people who still vanish near the site today? Hikers, campers, explorers who thought they could outsmart the legend? Some of them are never heard from again. Did they simply get lost? Or did the same thing that claimed Hollow Pines finally claim them too? Then there are the strangest details. Why were meals left half-finished, as if families were interrupted mid-bite? Why were lamps still burning when there was no one left to light them? Why were toys scattered on porches, as if children had been playing just moments before? If the town was abandoned slowly, none of that makes sense. But if it was abandoned all at once, what could possibly make an entire population leave in a single moment? And the biggest question of all, is Hollow Pines still out there? Still watching? Still waiting for the next curious traveler who doesn't believe the warnings? The truth is, no matter how many stories we hear, Hollow Pines never explains itself. It just sits in the dark, a puzzle with missing pieces, daring anyone to put it together. And so, Hollow Pines remains a riddle locked in the dark, a town that lived, laughed, worked, and then simply ceased to exist. Some say it was just weather or madness, or people fleeing hard times. Others believe it was something much older, much hungrier, hiding in the forest. But no matter which version you believe, one truth remains. The darkness never gave them back. So here's the question I'll leave with you. If you stood at the edge of those towering pines, staring into that endless night, would you step inside? Would you dare walk the same paths where families vanished, where voices still whisper, where shadows lean in to watch? Or would you turn away, leave hollow pines to the silence, and hope the night never follows you home? Tell me what you think happened in hollow pines. Was it nature? A curse? Another world entirely? I'd love to hear your theory. And remember, the story of hollow pines might just be a legend, or it might be something waiting in the D. Thanks for watching. If you enjoyed this video, hit that like button, subscribe, and ring the bell for more. Let me know your thoughts in the comments. I'd love to hear from you. See you in the next one. Bye for now.